Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Inshallah, we can get confirmation that y'all can hear me and see me. And forgive me, my voice is not going to be super full because I'm getting over an illness. Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. So today's lesson or live webinar brought to you by About Islam. My name is Karim Sirajuddin. Thank you for having me. Once again, I am the founder of Nude Human Consulting and the Coffee with Karim podcast. So I had a couple of points today that I wanted to share as kind of lessons or things that I've learned when I became a father. And this is more for kind of startup families and new fathers. My kids are all under the age of 3. I have 3 under the age of 3. So y'all know how that is. So my advice is basically kind of the first couple of years here. So this is very fresh and new rite of passage for myself. And so kind of having that real time in person, I'm already a human scientist by profession, by passion. So it's a lovely thing to just be able to witness and be there with the actual development of a human being that happens to be your child. So what I'm going to do is we got a bunch of questions submitted. So I'm actually going to just start answering those questions because I think a lot of those questions capture some of the main points that I wanted to share anyways. And then inshallah, we can go from there. Okay. So we have one question. It says, my wife and I are going to have our first baby. Okay. Mabruk. How can I prepare for fatherhood? My wife is giving me books to read, but I feel overwhelmed. It is too much for me. I want to be a good father. Do you recommend any book for Muslim fathers specifically? I have not found any. Okay. Yeah, and inshallah, I plan to write one. So hopefully make dua for me, a little guide to share for people. I don't know of any specific books. There are books on like parenting, like Muslim parenting books that you might want to check out. But look, people need to, prepare and educate themselves because these aren't always things that we learn from our parents, right? Like, oh, here's how you be a husband or a wife before you get married. Most of us aren't taught that, or taught, here's how you be a parent. Usually what we do is we use our own parents as a frame of reference, right? So if your parents didn't have a very healthy or, mature dynamic, that's the only frame of reference that you have. So this is why education is important. It is important to learn. It is important to discuss, methods, strategies, stress with your spouse, because you two are going to be a team fundamentally. But I also think you don't want to overdo it or over intellectualize it, because raising a child, it has to do more with instincts than it does, how many books you read. Even though, again, knowledge is important and I encourage everybody to learn whenever they're doing something new. But a lot of this is already hardwired in us, right? And what that means is, so before I had my children, I was of course afraid, very afraid, and worried and concerned. Can I do this? Do I know enough? Will I be a good father? Etc. All the same worries and concerns. But here's what you have to remember. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to give you this child, and inshallah it remains in good health and good iman. And this is an amana. And amana means trust, okay? Something that you have been secured with to take care of. Similar to if I said, here are keys to my, awesome beach house with access to my Ferraris. I don't have any of that stuff, but the analogy is, I give you my keys. I say, brother, you can take care of my home while I'm away, right? So this is an amana on you. I've entrusted you. I've secured this property or this blessing to you. So similarly, a child is given to us in the same way by Allah. And we have to remember that you don't technically own your children. You don't technically own your children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns your children. We are caretakers of our children, right? Just like we're caretakers of our own bodies. We also don't own our own bodies and our own selves. That's why if Allah wants, He can take us tomorrow or right now. And what are you going to do about it, right? So this is the fact that we don't actually own anything, even though many of us sometimes are under that illusion. So your child is a gift to you. It's a trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you. And yes, that has some anxiety attached to it. It's like, well, I want to take care of this. Just like if I gave you keys to my house, you'd say, I hope I really take good care of, the entrustment that Karim gave me here. But what you have to also remember is that this amana isn't given to you unless you're capable of doing it, inshallah. And now that you have this amana, you, of course, the anxiety that you feel, consider it like a type of energy. And energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but only transferred from one form to another. Thus, instead of feeling all that anxiety and stress and weighing you down, use it to be like, I need to take this energy and outsource it, or release it through the proper avenues, which will help me feel more prepared. So that could be learning more, it could be discussing things with your wife, it could be attending a workshop, making dua, and of course doing the practical things needed to prepare for the coming of a child, right? So the other thing that we have to remember as men is that the birth itself is a very powerful experience, and everyone has their preferences as far as where they are when that happens. Some people like to be in the bed delivery room, others like to wait outside. But beyond that point, I'm not really going to get into that point. But after that point, when you finally see your child and your child comes home, some men, and even including myself, there is a very powerful shift that happens. Something kind of happens for a lot of people, mothers and fathers. They see this child and all of a sudden it's like, wow, like your purpose, your value, your meaning, your function just took on this whole new texture. So that can be a lovely thing because it gives you that drive and essence of purpose and meaning. And when you take this child home, oftentimes fathers have a difficult time bonding with the child. It almost feels like we don't know what to do. We don't know if we're going to hurt it, if we're doing the right thing. So we just kind of like, just you take it. I don't know what to do here or whatever. Look, being a dad is something you're also going to learn along the way. And at first, it's difficult to really bond or connect with this creature that doesn't talk, is pretty blind, doesn't really, it knows who you are instinctually, but it can't, recognize you or anything like that. It can't talk. So all it does is cry, because crying is the only communication children have. And sometimes to the man's ear, that's really annoying. But to the woman's ear, she knows if the cry means, I need to be changed, I'm tired, I want to sleep, I'm hungry, I want love. SubhanAllah, there is this, power or, decoding mechanism that moms tend to have that dads don't. It's all the same white noise to us, or at least some of us. So don't freak out about that. More bonding and connection and attachment will come to your child as your child starts to evolve more. Like within 3 to 6 months, they can start to see, they're making noise, they're reacting to your face. This is prime time for you to really, spend time with your child. And this doesn't mean you just feed them or change them, but literally you hold them up, you look them in the face, you smile, you talk to them, and almost like have conversations with them as if you would talk to anybody else. I know it sounds a little silly, but the reality is that when you make eye contact to your child, speak to them, make facial expressions, that's all part of their learning and programming and connection and bond with you. And that has to continue all the way throughout life, because fundamentally the human being needs security and trust established at first. Then from there, we start to evolve into deeper attachment and bonding and connection and love and intimacy and all that good stuff. So your job right now is just to obviously protect your child from harm and be present as much as possible, in the ways that you feel you're comfortable doing. And the ways you're not comfortable in doing, you have to start practicing, because that's the only way you're going to learn how to actually change a diaper one day if you need to, or feed them, etc. So these are all things that to keep in mind at first. The second point that's very important when we bring home a new child is we are very adaptable. So even though you might be scared now, you don't know what's going to happen or what you're going to do, I'll tell you right now, my fear was like at a 10 before my child came, and then after they came, it was like pretty much gone. Yeah, there's still some anxiety of like, I want to make sure they're healthy and, follow up doctor appointments, all that stuff, but it's not as scary as you think. The reason why it's so scary is because it's so new. right? And we tend to fear what is unknown to us and new, because something that's new means it's unpredictable. And humans need predictability to survive and thrive. So this is one of the reasons why it's so, anxious. It's an anxiety provoking venture to have a child because of that unpredictability. But we will adapt. This switch kind of goes on, and think about it like this: your child isn't just something you have to raise, but it's something that you will grow with. Because just because you're an adult doesn't mean you don't have any more growth, obviously. And your child is an opportunity for you to keep growing, because they're going to refine you. They're going to help you become a better person, want to become a better person. And also, one of the blessings is all that joy and perhaps innocence or color from being a child. As parents, we get to relive that, through our children's eyes. So you get to bring back some of your own childhood passion and glow with your child. And this is important as your kids get older, like 1 or 2, they want to start playing, they're talking, they're walking. And sometimes I find that parents, usually dads, they may get kind of annoyed, or they see it as a burden to have to play with their kids, or their kids keep repeating things over and over again. Like, these are some of the comments or complaints I hear. Okay, but remember that if you make playtime your own with your child, in other words, you get into it, you make it fun for you. So you don't always have to just do what your kid tells you to do. The kid is going to change their mind every 2 minutes. But if you say, look, let's sit down and draw, because you like to draw, you start drawing stuff. Or you ask them, what do you want me to draw? And they say, oh, draw my truck and draw this and draw that. Now you're having fun and they're having fun. So you have to also make playtime something that is enjoyable and something that you both do together. And remember to grow with your child and relive your childhood and have fun with your kid, especially at age 1, 2, 3. This is the time where they're really looking for that fun and connection and creativity. The other tip I offer both mom and dad is routine, routine, routine. You have to turn into drill sergeants, or at least that's what works in my household. Maybe it won't in yours. But routine is very important, because, as I said earlier, we need predictability to be able to plan and survive and thrive and grow. If we don't know what's going to happen, or every day we have no idea what time the kid's going to sleep or not sleep or wake up or eat or this, everything's thrown off. It's just chaos. And that's going to affect your marriage and relationship. So as best as possible, establish a routine from day one. This is what I did in my family, and alhamdulillah, my kids are conditioned to sleep and nap at the same time pretty much every single day. And even if we don't put them down, they come to us and say, I want to go to sleep. It's, my nap time. So they're so conditioned that they now ask us to go to sleep when they need to. So routine, be drill sergeants if you have to be. Trust me, it's going to save so much time and heartache in the next, year of your lives. Establish a routine. Don't let the child dictate your schedule. You dictate the schedule for the child. And the last point I'll share on that is always prioritize your relationship, not the child's, right? This is a very common mistake. Now that the kid's here, it's all about the kid. No, it is now a lot of centralized around the kid, but you two are still the columns of the family, mom and dad. So don't neglect each other in the process. But we also have to accept, especially men, that you are going to take the back seat in some ways, right? In other words, the mother's focus and energy and concern is going to be 150% now towards the child. Not because your wife no longer loves you, or you've been replaced, or she doesn't care, but because her instincts as well are also kicking in. And as a mother who just gave birth, she has all kinds of hypersensitivity, strength, power, as well as exhaustion and stress to care for her newborn, right? And this new offspring that came. So we're talking about biological instincts, emotional connection, of course, the beauty and the spirituality of it all. Like, here's a child, a product of our love, our relationship. So men, remember that your wife, you're not being replaced. Your child would have never come here if your wife didn't love you in the first place, right? And even though there might be a sense of, neglect, or you're, kind of left out, as a guy, and sometimes men feel, hurt by this, just remember that it's just a small period of time. It's just a phase. Things will adjust, and within 6 months you'll be, inshallah, especially if you follow the routine principle, you'll be able to continue keeping up with the marital life that you had before. It won't be exactly the same, but it doesn't mean it has to die because now we're just parents together. No, you're always husband and wife first. And the bedroom recession that will be experienced in the first year, we have to accept this. Also remember that this is just a limited time, right? It's not going to be forever. If you start telling yourself, oh, this is going to be forever, then you're going to start thinking the marriage is over, and that's where a lot of times things go downhill for people because they don't know how to properly adjust. Just remember that it will be postponed, and if anything, you should, look forward to that time when that chapter gets reignited. And if you want to be able to have intimacy with your wife during this stressful time of, post-birth and adjustment, then you got to step up and help her, right? In matters like if you know that everything she has to do for the kid in the house, she's not done till 9 p.m., then you've got to step up and help out with things so that she can be done at 8 or 7:30 p.m. And that way you guys can spend some time together. So you can also facilitate what you want and what you need. You can't just do nothing, let your wife do everything, and then you're sitting back and going, how come, she's not available or have energy for me? All of us have limited units of energy per day. Let's say the number 100 units a day. Your wife is already at -10 by the time she's done putting the baby to sleep. So unless you're going to take on some of those tasks so that she's only at 80 out of 100 by the end of the day, she still has 20 units left, then guess what? That 20 units now can be used for you as well, or you two to connect, right? But it doesn't work otherwise. So next question we have, I work abroad and see my family once in 2 months for 2 weeks. Although we talk over Skype every day, I'm afraid not being there with them will affect them in a negative way. Is it true, and what shall I do? Okay, brother. Well, look, everybody has circumstances. Sometimes circumstances we can't change. We are, they've been put on us by life and we have to go through it. Look, statistically speaking, more presence with your family and more engagement, conscious engagement, because there's a lot of parents that are around their kids all the time, but there's no actual presence or connection or engagement. It's like they're there, but they're not there. So even if you're abroad, but the times you do connect to your family is very deep, is intimate, is conscious, it's fulfilling, then that's going to be, inshallah, enough until you're able to spend more time with them, right? And when you get time with them, you make the most of it when you do visit home. But this is not a long-term situation that you should, if it's possible, you should try your best to, change that, right? I have relatives who are in similar situations, right? Like husband works in a different country, has to fly back to where the family is. But when they're very young, I think the dad not being there all the time at first isn't the end of the world, although of course it's always preferred that there is deep bonding from day one. But naturally, once they're able to talk more and start, like around 1 year old, I would say, that you definitely need to be more present, especially if you have a son as well, because you need to already start having that healthy masculine energy and connection with your child. And from my work, I have noticed that sometimes whenever there's an imbalance in presence or connection of mother or father to the child, it can cause other issues later, right? So like if a boy over-identifies with his mom, because his dad's never around or he never deeply connects with him, that's actually going to start to make the child identify more with his feminine side, right? Which isn't a problem in and of itself, but it's only a problem if there is no masculine side because dad's barely around or it's only 2%, right? That can end up not allowing the child to optimize fully. And the same is true for the daughter as well, because the daughter needs a healthy and positive masculine energy and a role model to guide her and nourish her and validate her, because the type of father that you are is also going to help her determine what it means to be with a good man. And the type of man you want to marry your daughter in the future, you have to do your best to cultivate that understanding in her through your own modeling, right? You can't be a jerk as a dad and then expect her to marry a very nice, pious, sweet guy, or a very successful man when you don't work hard and you don't really care about taking care of your family, right? So if for that brother who's abroad, for now, make the most of your connections, but ultimately, more presence is always best. Next question. I'm a father of two little cute girls, 4 and 7. I'm usually a quiet man, not getting nervous easily. I love my girls and I love playing with them, but I got very, very nervous when they make noise while playing. Please advise me how to control my temper. Okay. Yeah, I hear you. Sometimes it's really annoying. Just nonstop noise and repetition and this. Look, remember that a child is a constant learning memory system. That's why they repeat stuff. I noticed this with my kids. For example, my son, who's becoming a lot more vocal these days, about 2.5, almost 3. There are certain days where he repeats the same words and phrases over and over again. It just drives me nuts, right? But I know, because I'm in this field, that that's actually his way of working and learning memory. It's also the way he is confirming and validating names of objects and his associations to those objects. That's why he keeps doing that. He'll say, Maya, is this water? Is this this? Is this sadness? Is this? So a child will go through almost phases of different things that they happen to be learning and repeating and doing over and over again. And that's usually also happening in play, by the way, because play is the main way that they learn as children. But the annoyance can come from it's just too much noise. So, of course, there is, number one, always remember as parents, both of you, breathe, 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 and breathe. Taking deep breaths really grounds us, calms us down, calms our nerves, refreshes us, gives us that clarity. Very, very important technique to start getting in the habit of from now. Because if you automate that as a natural thing, like you remember to take deep breaths every day, and a great place to remember that is during your salah. So a very simple standard is when you read Fatiha in salah, you should take at least 5 deep breaths throughout, right? So you start with 1, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, breath 2, and so on. So that gives you kind of a sense of every 2 to 3 seconds, you should be taking a deep breath, generally speaking. And if that's something you naturally can do and access, then you'll do it in those times when you get nervous and annoyed and the kids are getting too loud. Then, of course, there is ways that you have to direct the children. This is another big point, ladies and gentlemen, is as parents, we often tell our kids, stop this, stop making noise, stop doing this. Kids, that doesn't work for kids, especially if they're very young. What usually helps is if you direct them. Hey, guys, I know you're having fun with this game, but why don't we try this game? Or why don't we try reading now? So you direct them to basically still have fun and still connect, your daughters here, but you direct them in towards an activity that has less noise and less disturbance for that moment, right? That's another strategy to consider. And I hope, inshallah, those tips are helpful for now. Last question that we'll have to take. I'm going to be a father for the first time in less than 2 months. Congratulations. I'm usually a very unemotional guy, but I've never felt so nervous and terrified by the prospect, and I feel like I'm going to be useless. My dad died when I was 5 years old. Allah yarhamu. I don't feel I've experienced what it is to be a father. I can't tell my wife as I want to support her, not to cause her anxiety. How can I stop worrying about it? Simple rule, worry and concern and anxiety comes from the unknown, the unpredictable. So to counter that, you have to become empowered through knowledge, action, and practice. That's the only way you're ever going to get good at anything and build your confidence. The first time I gave a public speech, I was terrified and sweating, and I was probably very embarrassed, right? Now I do it and it's like talking to anybody else. Why? Because of practice. It was hard at first. And again, fatherhood, the good news is it's instinctual. It is something you will learn and adapt and grow with naturally along the way. And of course, if you want to beef that up or increase your momentum, seek knowledge. And it's better to let it out with your wife than to keep it in, because she may have similar anxieties and fear. Because sometimes part of the stress that we have is because we believe we're alone in our struggle. That's why when we talk about it, we share, we communicate, we're like, oh my God, my wife is also just as scared and nervous. And now we're in solidarity and we're supporting each other. It's like, oh, it's going to be okay. We're going to do this, and then you pump each other up and help each other to learn and grow, right? The emotions also is something that I think a lot of men may have difficulty with. So I think also with time, this can come just by interacting with your child naturally. But of course, learning more about emotional intelligence or how to bring more of that side of you to make it more accessible, remember that emotions happen in the body. So any type of body work, things that help your body move, not just exercise, even though that's really good, but more kind of conscious or intentional body work, stretching, deep breathing, dhikr, salah, yoga, tai chi, swimming, exercise, but being conscious of, what's happening in my body. And simple tool is remembering that we all have emotions. We just don't always identify them properly. So you could also check out some emotional intelligence tips or notes to help kind of improve that. But just remember, brother, that not having your dad passing away at age 5 doesn't mean that because you didn't have that modeling, that you won't be able to model your own version of fatherhood. That's the beauty, is it's up to you, because all of our parents did good things and they also made mistakes. So if you think about it, you're going to make mistakes and do good things like everybody else. And the degree or extent of your success or mistakes that you make has to do with your preparation, breathing. And I did give some tips at the beginning of this webinar that also I think would be useful. But I was terrified too. I was worried, and alhamdulillah, you adjust and it becomes a lot more peaceful. More barakah and openings and provision comes with the children. So I know it's scary, but also try to look at all the positive and beautiful things that are going to come from this, right? I mean, it's an amazing experience, and your greatest contribution and value to the planet is making sure there's a wonderful, beautiful, enlightened human being walking around, making it a better place. So that's our goal, inshallah. May Allah increase us. And if this was helpful, we can always continue this subject next time. Please let admin at About Islam know what you guys think out there in the audience. If you'd like to do this second round, inshallah, for our next webinar next month, inshallah. Thank you so much for your questions and your attendance. Thank you, About Islam, for inviting me once again. Have a lovely rest of your weekend, everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.